Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We've got a budget deck profile for you today, or deck tech as they call it in Magic. Yeah. So this is Mono White Weenie. This is a deck that I've been using quite a bit. I've been using it on stream at twitch.tv/arcanemtg, all one word. And I don't think I've actually lost a match with it yet, which is good. This is based on a deck that had a little bit of successes. I think it's had 2 top 8s recently. So it's not by any chance meta, but for a budget deck, it's had a fair amount of success. I've changed the list a bit in a way that I think is better. Taken out a couple of cards, changed it up I've added a few more flyers with a little bit of life gain, so effectively a Healer's Hawk, because I think that for my personal meta, that seems to do a bit better. And yeah, without further ado, let's get into the deck profile. Okay, so before we get started, I guess we should talk about a couple of things. This whole deck, at the time of making, I've linked it in the description. It's under $50, way under £50, probably about £40. A lot of these cards have got cheaper recently if they were mythics, like Gideon, or they're just really cheap cards. This is an aggro deck, a super aggro deck. The basic aim is that it runs loads of really cheap creatures, like this one cost. You're just trying to be faster than your opponent, get them in, and hit them for game before they even get set up. Again, good examples of that on stream. Yeah, so let's get into the deck. So as I said, creature heavy, so there's a lot more creatures than anything else. So let's start with the main deck. First of all, we got 4 Fairy Guide Mother. This guy's pretty cool. He's a 1/1 flyer if you use him as a creature, or his adventure is a 2-cost sorcery that target creature gets +2/+1 and gains flying to end a turn. This is kind of useful, but to be honest, I tend to just use him as a 1-drop to get some flying damage in there. A lot of decks aren't that equipped to deal with flyers, so this is good. Next, we've got 4 Healer's Hawk. This is something that's a bit different from other decks that run this. But again, I think flyers are so good, a lot of people can't really deal with them. This guy's just a flying lifelink, and there's a bit of life gain in there in case they're running something like Mono Red Cavalcade. This can help you out a lot against that, and again, another flyer. Next is not a flyer, but it's pretty standard in all White Weenie decks. So this is 4 Lorune Enforcer. It's a 1-cost 1/2, so it's got a bit higher power than the other, toughness than the others, but it's still cool. For 1 colorless, you can tap it to tap target creature with converted mana cost 2 or greater. So if they have got something big on the board that you can't get over, you can get it out the way and get straight through it. Next, we've got 4 Loyal Pegasus. This is a M20 card. It's okay. If anyone's got any good alternatives, let me know. This guy is a 1-cost 2/1 flying, but he can't attack or block alone. So he's great as long as you're managing to attack every turn. Next, we've got 4 Tithe Taker. This guy's great. During your turn, spells your opponent cost 1 more to cast, and abilities your opponent activates cost 1 more to activate unless they're mana abilities, which is great. Just helps try and stop your opponent interrupting you as much. It's also got Afterlife 1, so a 1/1 flyer comes out after it dies, and it's a 2-cost 2/1, which is great, to be honest. This is a great card. Next, we've got Tomic Distinguished Advocate. He's a 2/3 flyer for 2. He's a legendary, of course, so you can only have 1 of him out at any time. His ability is kind of irrelevant. He's basically there as a 2/3 flyer. To be honest, I don't even think I've ever drawn this card somehow, but he's a good card. Next, an MVP of the deck, 4 Venerated Loxodon. This guy is fantastic. He's a 5-mana Convoke, which means you can use your creatures as mana to summon him, which is great. And he's a 4/4, and the creatures that you convoke with him each get a 1/1 counter on them. Basically, if you get this guy out and use a full board of creatures for him, you've probably won the game. Multiple times on stream, I've won the game with him. And last, for the creatures, this is a bit of a tech that I run that other people don't really, but it's God Eternal Orchetra. She's quite a lot cheaper now. She's a 5-cost double strike whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 4/4 black zombie warrior creature token with vigilance, and if she dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, you may put her to the top of your owner's library, 3rd from the top. So she's a great card. If she comes out, she just wins games. She's a 3/6 double strike. And you get loads of zombie tokens. I think it's worth running 1 copy of this card just to surprise your opponents, and as I said, if she comes out, you tend to win. So, on to the sorceries and planeswalkers, etc. So we run 1 planeswalker in this deck, which is Gideon Blackblade. I'd run more if I could afford it, to be honest, maybe 2, and maybe some in the side. This guy's amazing.
He got a lot cheaper with the latest pack because White Weenie's not as much of a thing, but this is still a brilliant card. He's 1 colorless and 2 white for as long as it's your turn. Gideon Blackblade is a 4/4 human soldier creature with indestructible that's still a planeswalker, which is amazing. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to Gideon Blackblade during your turn, which means he's effectively indestructible unless they've got some planeswalker removal. And then you can +1 to give any target creature you control your choice of Vigilance, Lifelink, or Indestructible to end of turn. That's fairly self-explanatory. And his -6 is exile target permanent, which is also great, and people tend to forget about it because they're used to his other abilities. And again, this can sneak in and win you some games. So next I run 4 Heraldic Banner. This is a new card in Eldraine that's fairly cheap. It's a 3-cost artifact. When it enters battlefield, choose a color, so white, of course. Creatures you control of the chosen color get +1/+0. So it just helps your aggro game. Especially with those flyers, just helps you get in some more damage as early as you can. And it's 1 extra mana if needed. Next, I main deck 2 Conclave Tribunal. This has always been played in White Weenie. It's Convoke, which means you can use creatures to cast it. It's a 4-cost. When it enters the battlefield, you can exile target permanent your opponent controls and until Conclave Tribunal leaves the battlefield. And as people aren't running that much enchantment removal, this is basically just that card's a problem, let's get rid of it. So this card's great. And lastly, of the main deck, I run 4 Raise the Alarm. This is great. It's an instance, you can play it in your opponent's turn. You create 2/1 white soldier creature tokens, which are brilliant. You can use them for Convoke. Again, just helps your aggro strategy. And then next in the main deck, the last thing is I run 2 Castle Ardenvale and then 20 Plains, bringing you up to 60 cards. Castle Ardenvale is pretty good. I only run 2 of it because you kind of don't really want to open it with nothing else. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a plains. Tap it, add 1 white, or you can tap 4 and 2 colorless, 2 white, and it to create a 1/1 white human creature token, which is okay. It does definitely help if you've got not much else to do. This is a good card. So I run a total of 22 mana in this deck. To be honest, I'm thinking about cutting that down because, if anything, I seem to open with too much mana, and I have won games with only 2 mana on board. So, yeah, let me know. I'm thinking of dropping that down. So now we're on to the sideboard. This sideboard is a bit more of a work in progress. It's based a bit off those decks that did really well, but also some of my own stuff in there. Again, I'm experimenting with this, so feel free to follow it or do your own thing. If you do something different, let me know, and maybe I'll change one up. So first thing is 2 Giant Killer. This is the cool alternate art. So its adventure is an instant which lets you destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. It's a 1-cost 1/2 with 2 tap target creature. So it's actually very similar to the Lorien Enforcer, but it's cost slightly more, which is why I don't main deck it. I'd rather keep this in my side, and then if they are playing creatures with powers 4 or greater, then I'll side this in, and then it's worthwhile. Next, 2 Finale of Glory. This is a great card. I haven't sided it in much. It's X white, create X 2/2 white soldier creature tokens with vigilance. If X is 10 or more, create X 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying and vigilance. I guess I'd put this in if I thought the game was going to go on for a long time. If they've got one of those stally decks, then this might be worthwhile. I don't think you're going to get the angel effect off because this is an aggro deck. You're not going to end up with that much mana on board. And then run 1 Glass Casket. If I had more, I'd probably run more of it. It's similar to Conclave Tribunal, but you could side it in against certain decks because it only works on creatures with mana cost 3 or less. But it is cheaper, so it's an interesting card. I maybe would up that to 4. I play 1 Hushbringer. Again, I would up that if I had more of it. This is a 2-cost 1/2 with flying, lifelink, and creaturing enter the battlefield or dying don't cause abilities to trigger. So I'd side this in, for example, against an elemental deck that runs things like Risen Reef, and this would stop that. Next, I side 4 Unbreakable Formation. I think this is a brilliant card. It's a 3-cost instant that creatures you control gain indestructible to end a turn. And Addendum, which means if you cast a spell during your main phase, put a 1/1 counter on each of those creatures and they gain vigilance till end of turn. So you can win games with this. You can play it defensively or aggressively, which makes it a really versatile and brilliant card. Next, I play the other 2 Conclave Tribunals. Described it in the main. Again, if your opponent's got sort of a troublesome deck, this might be worthwhile. Now these last three cards are one-ofs, which I'm sort of experimenting with and seeing if they're going to make it in. One is Brought Back, two whites, choose up to 2 target permanent cards in your graveyard that were put there from the battlefield this turn, return to battlefield tapped. This can be useful if your opponent runs a lot of board wipes, which is obviously a problem for aggro, so it's in there. I'm not sure, I might replace it with something else. Rally of Wings, we run a lot of flyers. This is a great card. Again, this can be used aggressively to just win the game, basically. Just add some way more damage on board. And then last but not least, Deafening Silence. Each player can't cast more than 1 non-creature spell each turn. With this being an aggro deck, you don't have that much mana, so it's likely that you won't be casting more than 1 non-creature spell each turn anyway. So this doesn't really affect you, but it hurts your opponent. So I think this is a good card. I'd like to test it a bit more, possibly even putting it in the main deck, and then those running 4 of it in the main deck, then the decks that do run more than those will just be absolutely destroyed by this card, and who knows if they have enchantment removal in the side. Okay, thank you guys for watching. White, in general, is probably my favourite colour for decks. I think this deck's great. I've performed really well with it on stream. Again, twitch.tv/arcanemtg. Please give it a watch, and if you have enjoyed this video, please give it a like and please subscribe to the channel and let me know down below if you've got any suggestions. Always open to feedback. As I said, this channel is directed towards newer people and we don't claim to be experts ourselves, so if there's anything you think we should change, still keeping the budget down, then let me know. Thank you guys for watching.